Thank you. So I hope my mic's working. If it's not, wave at me frantically. I know there aren't many people here, but I do want to introduce Tim, who we didn't introduce. So Tim is mission critical to some of the things that we're about to say. Not only is he an extended member of the Walt Disney family, but he is a superstar in his own right, leading and helping us reshape Equifax Protect business to business, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So Tim, thank you. So before I hand over to Amy, I'm just going to give a really brief introduction to what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about cybersecurity, obviously. We're going to talk about the risk landscape as we see it. We're going to talk about the importance of leadership following a major event such as a breach. And then we're going to talk about what more we can get out of security, how we can use that commercially, and before we finish off with cybersecurity frameworks and how we can help the wider community. So let me hand over to you, Amy. Thank you.
Great. Would you be able to just click to the next slide, please, Phil, if
Yes,
you've got the... Yeah.
That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So before we kind of delve into the current kind of cybersecurity risk landscape, I thought it was worth us taking a very brief look back at events that have shaped kind of where we're at today in terms of security. So by no means a comprehensive list, otherwise it'd be a very long kind of slide deck and we'd be here for a while trying to cover everything. But a couple of dates worth calling out. So 1971, Bob Thomas, he was the first person to create a virus. So this was called the creeper virus, which, as we see today, many of the viruses that we see that kind of infect our systems, it was the first of its kind, but it's very much kind of based on what we see today. So a key date in our industry. 10 years later, we then had the first person to ever be convicted of a cybercrime. We obviously see that a lot more frequent now. We hear in the press a lot more of crime in this space that people get convicted for. But Ian Murphy, who I don't think is a relative of mine, but I need to look into that, he was the first person to be convicted of a hack of AT&T. And then a date, 1999, so not something that's kind of publicly known, but Jamil, who is our Global Chief Information Security Officer, he actually, whilst at university, hacked his university system, then reported back to the university on what he'd found and helped them kind of fix it. So we just thought that was a really interesting little fact about our head of security at Equifax.
Thanks, Amy. So this is the only picture in our slide deck that is not to brand, as you can guess. So yes, the FBI do have a wanted page. It's still up there. This is an exact lift. We stole it from their page. I'm sure they won't mind. There is a reward, so if you're traveling to China and you want to bring them back, that would be awesome. So actually, there's a serious point here. So 2013, I remember going to a conference and somebody saying to me that 2013 was the year of the breach, and we had Target, we had Home Depot. That was news at the time. It's no longer news. We have breaches all the time. I've got a Google alert, and when the US wakes up in the afternoon, I see loads and loads and loads of reports of breaches, just the breaches that are reported. So it's huge, huge business. And in fact, cybersecurity's really evolved to a point now we've got our own dictionary. We've got words such as phishing, vishing, smishing, whaling, spear phishing. Whoever came up with these, I don't know. But they're in the dictionary. You can even use them in Scrabble. I haven't yet managed to get 50 points, but they're all there. And it's interesting because when these words first came out, youngsters and those people even older than me didn't really understand what they meant. Now they're mainstream. They're more mainstream, actually, than the manifestos in the lead up to the events on the 4th of July. So they really are out there. It's a real game changer in terms of the dictionary. And also the people that committed these crimes have changed a lot. So in my previous days at Sky, I can remember dealing with hacktivist groups such as LulzSec, 4chan, Anonymous, really big groups. Then also we had organized crime groups. Then we had what we called script kiddies, who were people with a little bit of knowledge but caused a lot of damage, such as in the TalkTalk breach. And then we really moved to nation states, and the Chinese weren't the first. So the first major nation-state attack was probably 2006 with Stuxnet. So if you look over onto that really useful source of information, Wikipedia, it will tell you that that was Operation Olympic Games with the US attacking Iran. Since then, we have seen lots and lots of nation-state attacks. This is critical for us, and we heard earlier on another session Why? Because this is really about understanding who we're being targeted by. So this is transnational crime. This is really organized crime. We may have a big security budget, but the Chinese, the Russians have a bigger budget. So we need to understand that. We can't always do everything we can to defend, but we need to work together, come together, and do a lot more. So this was a real game changer for us in terms of investment. So what we saw was and typically you see this with a breach, you see a change in the C-suite. So the CISO arrives on the C-suite because they weren't there before, and other members that were on the C-suite, the CTO and so on and so forth, are suddenly gone. That was definitely the case in a number of breaches, and I'm pretty sure it was with Equifax too. You then see a consideration around investment. So for us, $1.5 billion, you will have heard that over the last few days, I'm sure, $1.5 billion investment in tech and security. It is a huge investment for any company. Leadership from the top, so this quote is from our Chief Security Officer, who is actually he's a superstar in his own right now, he's not a hacker. And he advises the FBI, so that's not only pretty cool, but that really sets the tone for where Equifax has actually got to. In terms of the leadership below Jamil, we have exactly the same, we're mirroring that global picture in that we have regional CISOs who also sit at the top table, and that's really important. That's a privileged position, and it's one we don't take lightly, but it also comes with a risk. So in the UK, we have the Financial Conduct Authority and the Senior Management Framework. What concerns me more, though, is in terms of liability and risk, in terms of the security leadership positions, is more around the position that law enforcement regulators are taking. So 2 cases in the last 18 months, one Chief Information Security Officer who was a previous assistant district attorney and who wrote much of the US cybercrime legislation, global security roles in Facebook, Uber, and Cloudflare, arrested and received a suspended jail sentence for not doing his job as well as he might have done. That's a real concern. Current one at the moment I can't talk about too much, but we had a breach a few years ago with SolarWinds, exactly the same position, and we would expect to see that in the near future. So empowerment, leadership, but a really big message around responsibility.
Yeah, and I think it's, I guess that top-down investment is so important. We see, and I think Craig touched on it earlier, that 50%, the UK government reports that 50%, that's kind of one of 2 businesses that have been here today, of UK businesses will be kind of targeted and suffer a cyber event or an incident. These are large numbers, and that's kind of risen from the previous year by 11%, and it's predicted it's just going to keep rising as our data footprint and technologies advance. So a couple of the risks that I think we just wanted to highlight, again, not a comprehensive list because we don't have all the time in the world, but ransomware and phishing, we've touched on that this morning. So ransomware, we've all had those emails, we've all been guilty of nearly clicking those links and opening those attachments. These are attacks on our emails, via phone, anything like that, where people are basically just trying to access our systems. And then ransomware, attackers entering your systems, your data, locking things down and holding you to ransom, whether that be for money or for their demands to get you to take action. These type of attacks, again, front door into the business, they're still the main kind of entry point. The numbers continue to rise, so it's really important that we understand what they are and how we can protect against them. Supply chain risk, so we all use supply chains to support our business, but do you really know what they do, how far our data goes, so who are the 4th parties, the 5th parties that support the business? I think we're very good at maybe kind of doing the assurance on the 3rd parties, our immediate suppliers, but not really continuing to look down the chain and understand where our data actually ends up. Then we've got kind of the insider threat. So I know this morning's session touched on people. So do your people have security in their DNA? Do you train them? Do you test their understanding, make them feel like they're engaged and knowledgeable in security? And it's really important that they are. They're, again, kind of the front door into the business for attackers. A couple of controls, I guess, to just think about when you think about these kind of risks that we've highlighted. So that people space, making sure you're screening your employees, you know who your people are, you're training them, and that's not only just the annual CBT that we all have to do and we all have to click through, it's ongoing assurance, making sure that your security team is embedded into all of your teams across the business so that people know who to contact and they feel engaged with security rather than just that annual assurance activity. Your technical controls, you make sure you've got kind of segregation in place. You haven't just kind of got a flat network, so if an attacker was to come through that front door, they can't just access all of your data straight away. Having that kind of layered defense, making sure your data and your kind of core assets to the business are protected is key. Monitoring, logging, making sure you can kind of track what's going on in your environment is also very important. Assurance activity, I've kind of touched on that on the supply chain, making sure that you're not just only reviewing your third parties, you're also finding out what's going on in that the rest of the supply chain. So getting data flows, regularly reviewing them, having conversations with your suppliers about what they're asking their suppliers is really, really important. I think there's also, we've spoke about, like I think earlier today, and a theme across the week has been around AI and emerging threats, the nation kind of attacks that we're all going to be kind of suffer across the next few years based on the current environment is also something we just need to think about and make sure we're having the conversation on. And then I think, again, just testing, so making sure that we're prepared. What happens when one of these events that, 50% of businesses are going to suffer something like this? And I think it was Dan earlier that said the other 50% probably just aren't aware that it's happening. So make sure you're prepared, because when these events happen, which they unfortunately will, how do you respond? Are your people aware of what actions they need to take? You need to be able to recover you need to be able to recover your business quickly. So having prepped, tested what you're going to do is really, really important.
Thanks, Amy. And actually, just to touch on insider risk, so probably 98% of all insider risk is innocent internal rather than external. So that security awareness piece actually is really critical. So Equifax's annual security report does not need to be published online, but is and has been for the last 4 years. Not because we're really proud of it, although we are, but because we think it's really important that we are transparent, that we tell people what we're doing, that if we can help other people, and we'll talk about some of that later, that we can. In terms of cyber events, so there's a lot of misinformation. It's very difficult to understand actually what the level of the threat actually is. The criminals don't do quality checks, they don't comply to standards, they don't have regulators, so it's very difficult to do an audit of their environment and understand just how big the threat is. So there are some reports out there that talk about 2,000 breaches, 2,000 successful security events every day, that talk about 4 million data records, new data records going out in the wild every day. That is a huge, huge amount. What we have here is visibility, though, and these are some of the metrics out of 24 key points on one page in our report. There's a lot more in there. I would encourage you to read it. I think it's quite useful, but I would say that. So, but what we do see are over 12 million events that we stop every single day. And we heard today from Vodafone, theirs will be much bigger because they have a much larger threat surface. But we don't just record that information, we learn from that, both automated and manual, and we update and change the defenses, so we keep building that success. 400 on the bottom right, 400 plus security professionals. So we heard earlier that Vodafone have 800 with over 100,000 staff. We have 13,000 staff, and carefully not to look too closely at HR here, but we have 400 security professionals, which means a number of things, but I prefer to think it means that we really take security seriously. So there are plenty of other call-outs in the report. There are two that aren't on the screen that I just wanted to touch on. ESG. ESG is really important. We've got our ESG lead in the room. We have done some great work. Security is one of the component parts of that, and that's really important. Our customers, our new customers, our old customers are all going to be asking for that. So security plays a really important part, and I'm really proud of the work that the team have done to support that. And we're going to do a lot more of that. The other one I really wanted to touch on was awareness. So engagement and awareness is critical. We can do everything that we want in terms of tech and patching and hygiene and policies and controls, but we've got to take people along with us. And if we don't take people along, then the other things will fall down. So that engagement piece is critical. So if you grab anybody from Team Equifax today, they will tell you that in their personal objectives, they have two that I just want to touch on. One is supporting transformation, doing the right thing for tech, moving to the cloud, and that is a good thing because Google have an amazingly large security budget. That helps us keep stuff even more secure. But on top of that, they have a security objective. So looking out for those phishing emails, reporting on them, doing the right thing, looking out for the phishing simulations that we do regularly, keeping up with policies, and all the other things that generally people struggle with in organizations. So that's one of the elements that I'm most proud of. The engagement, when I look at Equifax, is 90%, where typically you'd see between 20 and 30%, 90% all in. So that's quite amazing. So why is that amazing? So it really means that we're doing a lot more here to get them more involved, to get them engaged. They understand what we want them to focus on from a security perspective. They ask those difficult questions. They're our ambassadors. They're not just leaving security to the security team. Often you'll go to organizations and everybody will say, or security will say, it's all, we're all in this together. But I think what I'm most impressed with is that actually we really mean it. So what we've done, one of the things, and what if we could use that knowledge, that drive, that engagement to do more? What if we could think beyond our perimeter, and we could think beyond protecting our business? And what if we could use that knowledge to help our customers? So what if we could use the knowledge, the data, the experience, the work that we've done to try and help our customers get to a point where there is much, much better engagement in their organizations, we can support their awareness programs and reduce the risk. So instead of doing the really smart stuff that Tim does in terms of selling breach services, we can actually get them to a point where they don't have the breach in the first place. So one of the areas that we've really been focused on is looking at the great work that's done in our consumer solutions area, looking at one of our key products, Equifax Protect, and really moving the dial on that. Moving that from, okay, that does some brilliant stuff around protecting individuals, fantastic, but what if we could do more? What if we could repurpose that and present a business-to-business opportunity? So if you want to know more about that, Tim's your first port of call, but Amy and I are also around, and we'd be super excited to talk to you about that. Going to hand over to you, Amy, to talk about framework and how we help the wider community.
Yeah, so one of the things that Equifax did at the start of last year was to publish our security framework. So this is freely available on our website, so we welcome everybody to go and access that. So based on NIST, I know the chaps earlier spoke about NIST and how beneficial that is to our industry. So Equifax have based all of their kind of security framework and policies and standards on NIST. It's a really great guide to help businesses think about how they can adapt and adopt some of the security controls that Equifax have put in place. And I guess why do we publish that? I know there's probably some people in the room that have tried to speak to clients, and we've always said, no, you can't share that, you can't share that, don't share policies, standards. So why all of a sudden have we published that? Well, it's all about, I guess, the transparency. We've all got a common goal within the credit industry to make sure security is part of your business's DNA, part of your people's DNA. So we're kind of hopefully helping with that. It is, we're really proud that, I think, Phil, you've touched on the fact we've spent $1.5 billion on the tech and security transformation, and we're really proud of that, and we want to publish that and offer that support to others. So that's why we've published our framework on our intranet. So we welcome everyone to view that. Last year we had about 7,500 people access that, so we can really see that people are engaged with that. It's really hopefully helping them. So yeah, we welcome everybody to, again, access that via our internet.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you everyone for listening. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you both. Yes, there's a question right there. Should security take priority over risk such collection functions, considering the volatility of the world?
Shall I take that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. No. So let me give you a clear answer. No. So you don't run a business to secure it. You secure a business to make sure it's successful. So the role of security is to support you in everything you do, not to stop you doing it. If you lose that competitive edge, there's no security. Hopefully that makes sense, but I'm happy to talk more here if whoever asked that question wants to grab me afterwards. But security is the support function. The exception, of course, is if we're running a security a business and we're selling security, then it's very different. But Equifax is not that.
Okay, thank you. What if you don't have the finances to implement the best solution? I know you've been talking about NIST as a guideline, but is there an off-the-shelf option which might benefit some smaller companies?
I'll do that, or do you want me to?
You're probably more up to speed with some of the tools that are
all right. I think you could probably do better, but don't worry, that's fine, that's all good. So, it's not really about finances, it's about having the right people and the right support and the leadership at the top. So we're fortunate, we have all of those things, but it's about having that direction and the leadership to understand actually that security is really important. I gave a presentation to board a few years ago, 3 non-execs in the room, and I asked them the question, how important was security? And I got 3 very different answers. One was, it's the most important thing. It isn't. It's really important, but I don't know how important. And the third option was, actually, I don't know. So the challenge is to make sure that security is there, supporting the business, working with the leadership team. And when you're spending money on security, you need to know what value add you're getting. So you need to get some metrics in the same way as you would do from operations, from technology, from sales. So you're spending money, you've got people, what are they doing? It's not about the amount of money you spend. It's about understanding the risk that you face and putting the right strategy in place and supporting. And actually, there are plenty of people out there in the wider community that can help. So you mentioned the NIST, which is the US standard. In fact, you mentioned it as well, Amy. Mm-hmm. That's really important because it's a capability maturity model. It's not a straightforward pass or fail. So in the UK, some of the security standards are really expensive. Others you're expected to have, like Cyber Essentials Plus. NIST is great because as you acquire companies, as you build new products, you can talk about how the security posture went up and down. And it's just having that level of understanding. In the earlier session, people spoke about the National Cybersecurity Centre. There are loads of free things on offer that can help, and it's about talking to the wider community, and actually people do want to talk.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to take that last one. How would you encourage the industry players to collaborate more on this topic? I know you've made access to information really available because you do want to foster that collaborative environment when it comes to cybersecurity. What else can other industry players do?
So we're really keen to talk to our opposition in a safe, non-competitive way. So we do want to share those experiences. There are platforms in the UK and there are across the world. But if I look at the UK, because that's where we are, so we have the the cyber sharing partnership, which comes under the National Cybersecurity Centre. It's free to access. If you don't know how to do it, let me know and I'll help you. And this is around bringing those industry people together, along with actually the public sector, including government and law enforcement, to really share experiences on events, even when they're unfolding in real time. So there's lots out there.
And I think it's things like this, like the fact that we've been invited to an event that is obviously the Credit Week event, but talking about security at something like this, getting people engaged is really important. Tons of security-focused events, but a room full of cyber people, potentially you're not getting different views, different opinions, hearing from businesses what they're facing. So being in a room with different businesses, different departments and organisations helps us learn and understand what's going on. So I think, getting out more to non-cyber focused events is really, really key as well.
Yeah, good point. There's no, you might be preaching to the converted when you're at one of those events. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that's one final one. Does the rise in AI present a risk to info security?
Gosh, that's such a broad question. I think it presents lots of opportunities. So when we look at the number of cyber events that we see every day and stop, there's a huge amount of AI, which isn't new. There's a huge amount of AI that goes into, because people are not going to stop 12 million attacks. You have to, a day, you have to really have the right technology behind you, and AI is just one of those. I think coming back to security is there to support the business. AI is a tool that can be used to grow the business, so security's role is not to stop it, govern it, and so on. It is to understand, one, what are the risks? And there are some risks. So we've seen a rise in nation-state attacks. We've got sanctions on Russia, so they have to go out and raise money, which means we see even more attacks. And they're embracing AI, and they have done for many years. So we need to understand how we can see that at the edge as it comes in, how we can respond with our own tooling, which includes artificial intelligence. But we also need to understand those new products and services and the innovation that we design within the business, where we're leveraging AI, and get security in right at the beginning to make sure that we're keeping that safe. So I think with everything else, there is risk and opportunity, and I prefer to think that there's way more opportunity than risk.
Yeah, and just building on that, I think it's like anything that a business wants to develop, as long as it's going through the right checks, balances, we understand the use cases, what data is going into those models, and we're kind of monitoring it, more of a massive opportunity than any great risk.
Okay, excellent. I think that's all we've got time for. Big round of applause, please, for Phillip and Amy.
Thank you.